welcome back to Bridal Sewing Techniques, and today we're going to talk about using a razor instead of a seam ripper. I know it seems quite daunting to switch over to a razor when you've been using a seam ripper for years, but let me just tell you, if you happen to be in my shop and ask me, hey, can you pass me the seam ripper? I'd have to tell you that I don't have one, or if I have one, it's buried somewhere. I just don't use them. So to get you more comfortable with the idea of using a razor, I figured I would put together a video that shows you all the different ways to use it. Just thinking that maybe if you see this and watch it in detail, that you might feel more comfortable with the idea of practicing with a razor. You can just get some cheap old 80s prom dresses from a Goodwill or something like that, and cut open some seams and just practice with it. And when you get good at it, go ahead and start using it on some of your less risky jobs. And then over time, of course, like everything else, your fine motor skills are gonna swoop right in and learn how to handle it. So I just opened the top of a side seam, and now I'm separating a bodice from a skirt. One good rule of thumb when dealing with the razor is always point the razor tip toward the part of the fabric that matters the least. You don't want to point it toward something that is the most delicate or something that's going to be seen on the outside, if you get a choice. Now, how did I start using a razor instead of a seam ripper? Years ago, a friend of mine who is now retired mentioned the idea of using a razor to me, and she graduated from F.I.T years ago. I mean, probably 40 years ago, the Fashion Institute of Technology in NYC. And she told me that one of their big exams was to bring in a potato. Yes, I know that sounds crazy. They had to bring in a potato. Well, wait, before I tell you the rest of that story, let me explain what I'm doing right here. I know some of you are at different skill levels, so some of you may know this. Some of you who are just starting out may not. But to break a seam line, you're just going to break the stitch every third stitch on one side. Then on the back side, you can just pull the thread right out, pops right out. So that should save you some time. Anyways, back to the potato story. They had to bring in a potato, but it had to be brought in two parts. One part was the white meat of the potato. The other part had to be a pile of the skin that they had removed with their razor. The pile of skin was not allowed to have any of the white of the potato on it. So that's a little drill you could do if you're nervous about starting out with putting a razor to fabric, and it's going to make you really, really accurate with the razor. I find that I slip and cut myself or hurt myself much less frequently than I did when I had a seam ripper. A seam ripper, for some reason, it kind of gets jammed up in the row of threads, and then when it breaks through, a lot of times it'll end up stabbing the fabric or stabbing your finger, that kind of thing. And I have found the razor takes a lot less pressure to push through. Now, concerning the thing that was holding me back from adopting this tool initially was I was afraid that because of the ergonomics of it, the way that your hand is held so much tighter and smaller to work with the razor, that my hands would hurt worse than they would if I was using a traditional seam ripper. I have found that to not be true in my experience because this is so much faster. I'm opening seams 3 and 4 times faster than I would with a seam ripper. Now, as far as brands go, my favorite brand is the Warner brand, and I usually get that at my local hardware store. So as you can see, there's lots of uses for razors. Well, if you use it for this, I guess you would need to throw it away. But I hope this video has helped you. If you're still a little nervous, watch it a couple times. It should relax you to the idea of using a razor instead of a seam ripper. Comment down below on what you use to open seams. And you can also mention if you feel like you've never used the razor before, but now you're ready to take the leap.